Hi everyone, my name is Omar and welcome back to the Debo's Way. So today I want to talk to you about the idea of comparing yourself to other people. And I want to give you something to think about, and I also want to give you something actionable that you can try doing. It's worked very well for me. It might work for you. You might take an idea from it and then try to adjust it to your own life, but I think it's something worth thinking about. And before I get into the video, I want to give two big disclaimers. One, I used to compare myself to people all the time. I still compare myself to people sometimes nowadays, and I'm so sure that I will never reach a point where I will never compare myself to someone else. And that leads me to my second point actually. I don't think that comparing yourself to other people is 100% a bad thing. Every once in a while, it's good to have a look up at society and see where the general average or the general equilibrium is. So it's not 100% bad to compare yourself to other people, but it's definitely not a favorable thing to be doing all the time, right? And in today's video, we're gonna deep dive into that. Let me give you an example. Let's say you find yourself comparing to your friend. Now, I don't know anything about your friend, and I also don't know anything about you. I would love to get to meet you, but I don't know anything about you. But I'll give you a few objective facts right now. You and your friend were raised in a different household with different parents. You might have went to the same school, but your experience in the school was completely different than his experience with the school. You have different siblings. Your experience with the same friend group is different than his experience with the same friend group. So the comparison isn't even fair. It's not an apple to apple comparison. So even if you're deluded enough to convince yourself that you're better than your friend, it's not a fair apple to apple comparison. And let me even give you a more granular example. You and your brother, or you and your sibling. You guys got your parents at different stages of their lives. Let's say you're the older sibling, you got your parents in the early 30s, he didn't. So it's not even a fair apple to apple comparison. But you know what a fair comparison is? If you compare yourself to yourself. And listen, I know that people tell you this all the time. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday and not to who someone else is today. And people used to tell me this all the time, but I would still find myself comparing myself to other people. So that's when I decided to take a step back and try to find the solution to that problem. And something that ended up working very well for me, and I hope you can take away something from it, was that I started keeping an inventory of myself. So you might be thinking to yourself, what does keep an inventory of myself mean? I'll explain that in the next part of the video. Now, what keeping an inventory of yourself means is simply having a reference to go back to whenever you find yourself having the need to compare yourself. Because like we said, the goal isn't that we're gonna stop comparing ourselves, because that's not necessarily a bad thing. But what we're gonna try to change is who we're comparing ourselves to. So when you have a reference to go back to, your inventory, you will then, whenever you get that feeling that you want to compare yourself, you will directly go back to that inventory. Because what tends to happen, right? We get that feeling that we want to compare ourselves, which is a very natural thing to do. And then we have nothing to compare it to. So instead of looking inwards and looking at how well we've done to reach the point that we have, we start looking outwards because we don't have an inventory to go back to. So that's what the idea of keeping an inventory of yourself means. So I want to share with you what I do to keep an inventory for myself. You can try it out. If it doesn't work for you, that's so okay. You can try to find your own way to keep an inventory for yourself, and I'm sure that will do wonders for you. So around 2 months ago, that's when I started my first corporate job. And in my first week, I was obviously so nervous and so anxious because they were giving me all these tasks, which I had never done before. So what I told myself was this. I was like, I'm gonna record myself and I'm gonna tell myself exactly how I feel throughout that first week. And on that Friday, when I finished the 5th day, I took a video and I told myself exactly how I felt. I was very honest with myself and I didn't judge myself at all. And I was like, this is how you feel. You don't know how to do this. You don't even know what you don't know. Like, they kept telling me to ask questions and I was like, I don't even know what to ask. And that's so normal, right? But what ended up happening was, at the end of the first month, when I wanted to see how far I've come after 4 weeks at the job, I had something to go back to. I had my own inventory. Now, instead of looking outwards and comparing myself to someone who had been doing the job for a year or even 2 years, I had something to compare myself to. And that was so helpful for me because it gave me this sense of accomplishment of like, look how far you've come in a month. Rather than looking outwards and then just looking at like, oh, well, these people are doing so well and neglecting all the progress that I've made. Because I had that inventory. And now I want you to try to find what works for you. Maybe try recording yourself doing something for the first time. Let's say you want to learn a language. I used the same example in my last video, but I like learning languages. That's why I keep using it. But let's say you want to learn a language. Record yourself speaking in that language for the first time. And then I promise you, if you look back at that video after it by 2 months and you actually put in the work to learn the language, you might not be fluent in the language. Actually, I'm telling you now, you will not be fluent in 2 months. But I promise you, you will definitely be way better than where you were 2 months ago. And instead of comparing yourself to everyone else, you will have an inventory to go back to. And now that inventory could be through journaling, it could be through videoing, or it could be through anything. But just have an inventory of you. Because when you have that inventory, you won't go out, you will go in. Like I said earlier in the video, it's not a bad thing to want to compare yourself. But what we're trying to change is who you're constantly comparing yourself to. And that person should be you. And through keeping that inventory, you will have a reference to go back to. You will have a base to go back to. And I promise you, once you're 3-4 years into the progress of completing that goal, you will look back at that first video and you'll tell yourself, wow, I've come a long way. And it will be something that will make you feel really good. I can promise you that. And if you find yourself comparing yourself to other people, it's so normal. The goal isn't to stop comparing yourself to people forever. That's not the goal. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to just shift that constant comparison to other people to comparing yourself to yourself. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I really hope to see you soon. Peace.